County Executive Dooley, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. Joining County Executive Charlie Dooley and Public Safety Director for the State of Missouri, Dan Isom, and I, as we share our thoughts with you as we come closer to a decision of the grand jury. As Charlie said, we do not know when the decision's coming out, but we expect that it'll be coming very shortly, and we wanted to give you our thoughts as we go forward. That is because we believe that it would be imprudent not to plan for protests regardless of what that decision might be. We have been criticized by some for sitting down with the protest leaders. The protest leaders have been criticized for sitting down with us. We did so because in similar situations in other cities, things ended up very, very badly. We do not want that for our city or our region. This is our city, this is our region, and we live here together. With that in mind, our police commanders engaged some protest leaders on rules of conduct. In person and on conference calls, the two sides have met about 5 times to discuss them. The police commanders and County Executive Charlie Dooley and I agreed to most of those rules because they made sense or we were already doing those things. We did not agree to some of the proposed rules because those rules would have limited the officer's ability to keep people and properties safe. The bottom line is that we instructed our police officers to protect the protesters' constitutional rights. We have directed them to use more active tactics only when necessary to keep people safe or to protect property. If there are protests, we expect some of the protesters will be disruptive. They will likely try, as they did in October, to inconvenience people to make a point. If protesters are nonviolent, police will not be aggressive. But if some protesters turn violent or are threatening, police will respond to keep everyone safe, including bystanders, the peaceful protesters, and the police officers themselves. When demonstrators are being civilly disobedient, they will, in most cases, be given a chance to adhere to the law before they are arrested. And then, if necessary, they will be arrested in a non-violent manner. Depending on the circumstances, they may be allowed to occupy public spaces longer than normally tolerated. That will be decided on a case-by-case basis. Our departments, our police departments, will address appropriately to protect themselves, not in an effort to intimidate protesters. Our goal, our job, and our prayer is that at the end of each day, everyone goes home safe. Police, the protesters, and people who are not involved in the protests. That there's no widespread damage to people's homes and businesses, and that we begin to heal, to close the racial divide, to make the changes needed to make St. Louis a more fair and just city for everyone. I ask everyone, the protesters, police officers, and everyone else to remember our underlying goal, and that is to protect the demonstrators' constitutional right and to keep everyone and their property safe.
You sent a message out. You said to those who want to be heard, we will allow you to be heard. What message are you sending to people who want to disrupt, who may come here with a goal to be disruptive?
Again, we're going to take that on a case-by-case basis, and we're going to do the appropriate things at that time.
Fair enough, but do you have a message for them, what they can expect if they don't follow their rules?
Violence will not be tolerated,
right.
is
They're gonna be
number
arrested.
one. Violence is not going to be tolerated. Depending on the disruption, it's going to all depend on the circumstances,
Right.
how long it's tolerated, what kind of issues it's creating. But ultimately, we want to protect people and property. We want to protect constitutional rights of the protesters.
Is there a reason for people around the St. Louis region to be worried about what happens after the grand jury, or are people just getting up in a tizzy for no reason?
Well, I'll tell you this is, first of all, it would be imprudent for us not to be prepared for some widespread unrest as a result of whatever the decision may be. So that's why we're taking these precautions. We need to be prepared for whatever happens, and we will be. We have no information that would cause us to advise any of our citizens that they should be in fear of their life or their property. We have no information that would cause us. We have no information that would cause us. Let me clarify that. Would cause us to tell people to do anything than their ordinate, what they would normally do. Go to work, go to school, those kinds of things. But again, we want to make sure that we are letting people know that if something does happen and there is, some unrest or protesting, that we're prepared to handle it.
This is a question for all of you. Back in August, when the police were dealing with the protesters, particularly over on West Florissant Avenue, you had a whole bunch of them there. I know that obviously you had the National Guard that's going to be coming in as well, but resource-wise, if there's going to be a lot of people here dealing with the protesters, what about the other crimes that are happening in other areas, whether it's muggings, et cetera, et cetera? Are there going to be resources to deal with other things in other areas?
Absolutely.
Can you talk about that a little bit more? Any numbers?
Well, I can't give you numbers, but I will tell you that the rest of the areas, I can tell you from the city that I'm responsible for, will be adequately protected, and that's part of the reason why we have the National Guard coming in. They help back up our police officers. They're not going to be on the front lines with the protesters, but they will be helping back up our police officers so we have the resources not only to address any protests or other issues that may come as a result, but also to make sure that the people in our neighborhoods are safe as well.
Mr. Mayor, would it be unrealistic to tell people there's going to be no problems, this is going to be just a perfect situation where there's going to be no violence by the protesters, no aggressive actions by the police in response to that? Would that be unrealistic?
Yes.
May I ask, gentlemen, can you characterize this document? How many do you completely agree with the protesters on? How many in part? How many do you reject? And the reaction to it?
And when
Yes.
is it in effect? Is it
Can we get
already
one
in
question
effect?
at a time, please?
Yeah, here's what I will tell you. If you read that, it'll give you all those answers. It's all in there.
Okay, we
It
take one more
It
question.
tells you what the request was and then what the response is. Now, nothing's in effect, okay? This is not considered an agreement. There were no negotiations. These are issues. This was an effort to try to just engage with protesters and leadership as a line of communication. What are their concerns? What are they looking at? What are things? That was very helpful to us in order for us and our law enforcement to do our job. And I think the most important thing about this, and we can, I don't want to start, arguing over what it means or what it is, but I will tell you that what this means to me is that demonstrates there has been some real, significant, meaningful discussions and conversations between some within the protest community that don't represent everybody, and government as well as law enforcement, so that we have a better understanding going forward, which I think will help make everybody safer, protesters and the police as well. But it'll tell you exactly there the things that we were agreeing to and the things that we agreed to with caveats and the things that we couldn't agree to and why.
A response, not a settlement.
It's not a settlement. This was not a negotiation. This was no settlement. There was no effort for that. It was mostly an effort to engage in conversation and communication, and I think it was successful in that regard.
Okay, one more question, then we have to get to
Mr. Mayor or anybody.
That's the final question.
Number 18, police will provide public information that makes clear the chain of command. What is that chain of command? What agencies? What are the names of the people who are making the decisions?
Yeah, I would be making the decisions in the city of St. Louis as the mayor of the city of St. Louis. The police chief and our public safety director report to me. In the city of St. Louis, Police Chief not Dan Eisman, he was our former police chief.
He still loves it.
Thank
He
you.
still loves it.
He was our last chief.
Yes.
Sam Dotson is in command of his police force. He reports to Richard Gray, who is a civilian and is our public safety director, and both of them report to me.